What's going on, guilty guys and gals? And it's time to fulfill my promise from, what day was that? April 29th, I think? The, Finish Infinity Train Day. That was the day I was moving, which was very unfortunate because I wanted to make something like this for that day. If I wasn't moving at that time, that would have been perfect. But I'm going to do it now. To be fair, though, it's probably for the best that I waited because I rewatched all the episodes in the meantime. So now I feel like I can give a pretty fair review of each of the episodes, and I'm going to be ranking them. I'm going to rank them within tiers as well. So we're going to try to find out what the best episode is and what the worst one is. I really love Infinity Train, other than Avatar, which, again, same thing. I only watched in the last year or so. It's one of my favorite Western animated shows ever. So I really hope they get to come back and finish it. Come on. And when the pilot first aired, that was the first time I actually engaged with the show. So I've been here since the beginning, you know? Well, it's going to be nice at least to go through all of these again and talk with you guys about it. I know I don't do animation stuff very often on my channel, but this is a very special case, and I'm going to try including it a little bit more, because it is like my, after video games, second largest passion, I suppose. So yeah, it's all in order. So we're going to go from episode 1 of season 1 to episode 10 of season 4. I almost said 11. 11 seasons, wow. Now, alright. I also have a list of the names of the cars, because I know what happens in all of them, but some of them, like this one, for example, I don't remember what this is called. It's called the Grid Car. This is episode 1 of the entire series. This one, no. I think this is where I had it. This one is pretty dang good. It's a great introduction to the concept, which is very useful. Speaking of, I was going to introduce you to how I rank these episodes. I almost forgot. Then people would have got mad at me in the comments. But there's I think what is it, 4 I came up with facets that really make a good Infinity Train episode. The car is unique and cool, and it what happens in the car, this is point 2. The plot events of the car directly relate to the person's problem or one of their person's problems. The denizens of the car specifically are very tied into exactly what we're talking about with the person's problem. And there was probably a 4th point in there, but I don't remember. I'll remember it halfway through. But yeah, it's basically the creativity of the car, what happens in the car, and how the residents of the car are influential into the person's journey. So yeah, the Grid Car. If it was just the Grid Car, not that great of an episode. The best we get out of the Grid Car itself is, this is what Tulip's video game is about. But everything leading up to the Grid Car, and also when Tulip goes into the Wasteland, which is also in this episode feels like 3 episodes long. There's so much going on. Is really, really good. So I think I can put it in A tier. S tier being the best episodes of the show. A tier being good episodes but with problems. B tier being pretty solid episodes. C tier being average kind of TV show, average kid show TV episodes. And then F tier being only one episode that I just personally hate a lot. The only episode that I would actively skip rewatching the show. So yeah, next is, what is this one called? The Beach Car. I always want to call it the Lake Car or the Ocean Car. But, there's a beach attached to both of those, so I guess it works. This one actually has denizens in it, so we can actually talk about that. Randall and the cat. I like the cat a lot, and this is a pretty good introduction to the cat as a character. The cat is like a denizen that roams the train, right? So there's always in the background of these episodes some reason why she's there. And it makes a lot of sense that the cat would be here because Randall is a dummy. She just wants to take advantage of Randall being a dummy. I think Randall's very charming. Not a ton happens in this episode, plot-wise, though, for Tulip. Tulip gives up 1-1 and then gets 1-1 back. It's like, yeah, okay. It's okay. We'll put it in B. Next up is Corgunia the Corgi Car. I like this episode quite a lot. Atticus is really great in terms of a denizen with Tulip because Atticus is bold and brash and Tulip is calculating and overthinking everything. So they complement each other quite well. I do like the quote-unquote twist that the monster was a spider, and then to have it turn around and the monster is the steward. And the setting is very neat, right? Like ancient Greece, but they're corgis. It's pretty good. I'm going to put this in A as well. Not an S tier episode, I don't think. Nothing ground shattering happens, but it's pretty solid. And it gives us some good train lore too, which is I think what my fourth point was supposed to be. Does it develop the train at all? And in that case, episode 1 of season 1 does a really good job with that because it, explains the outside of the train. It explains how the train appears to people. And episode 2, not so much. All we really learn about is the fact that denizens can move from their own car, which I guess is still something. It's hard to think about it back then, but we didn't even know if that was possible in the first season. Wow. The Crystal Car. This is an okay episode. This is one of the most average TV show episodes of Infinity Train there is, 100%. Tulip has to sing a song she remembers that jogs her memories about, her family and all that. I think in any other show, a car where everything is made out of crystals would be interesting to me. But as Infinity Train cars go, it's kind of meh, honestly. Doesn't really develop the train lore much. Doesn't kind of involve the characters. The denizens aren't really anything. It's basically just an average show, average TV show episode for kids. It's nothing groundbreaking like Infinity Train likes to do. Next up, the Cat's Car. I try to call this one the Tape Car all the time. No, it's the Cat's Car. Yeah, it's the first S tier for sure. Also, Corgunia. No, Grid Car. Grid Car is better. I forgot I was ranking between tiers. The Cat's Car. So, we get tapes in this episode, which explains to us something about train lore. We get Tulip's backstory, which is involved with her character. We get the cat, which is very much helping us get involved with Tulip's character. And we get a pretty cool car. I guess technically the tape itself isn't the car, even though we spend most of the time in it. But I would kind of count that as the thing. Like, the Cat's Car itself is just a collection of junk, right? But, which informs us about the cat, I suppose. But the tape car itself, like the tape itself, I did it. I called it the Tape Car again. Is basically our setting for this episode, and it's really solid. This is probably the best backstory explanation episode in the whole show, other than maybe one. But we'll get to that. Next up, the Unfinished Car. It's another S tier. I think I kind of shortchanged season 1 before I watched it again. There is some really good episodes in season 1 with some really creative settings. And the idea of a car that is broken, but they've essentially built their life around it being broken, so fixing it actually breaks it worse. That's kind of really cool. I like that it's foreshadowing for future train events, both with 1-1 and Amelia, and I just like the idea of it. Tulip's realization, it's got all 4 points, right? We get train lore, we get Tulip's realization about her growth, we get the denizens involved in just because things aren't perfect doesn't mean that they can't be good, which again with Tulip's journey, and we get I always forget my fourth thing. The setting, the car itself being broken is pretty neat. The chrome car, hey, look at that. Oh boy, that one's tough. Do I like the chrome car more than... No, but I do think I like the unfinished car more than the cat's car. The unfinished car is just very nice conceptually. The chrome car is very good as well, though. MT, or Mirror Tulip, is a really great denizen for exposing Tulip's character. The sort of like... I really like the subversion of like the evil mirror twin as well, where, yeah, not the nicest to you immediately, but it's because, you know, there's an entire system of oppression on the mirror world. I don't know. Setting, brilliant. Character, very good. Helpful for Tulip. Helps her grow. And then we get the kind of like weird idea that like, okay, the train can influence the real world. Technically, this doesn't come until the final episode. But Tulip no longer has a reflection for the rest of the show because her reflection left. So, like, how does that work? Did Tulip's reflection become alive when she came into that car? Or are all the reflections in the real world all already alive and the train is giving us a glance into an alternate dimension? That's crazy, right? That's a good thinker episode. And then we get to the freaking, what is this one called? The ball pit car, right? The ball pit car, yes. I'm really torn on this one, all right? Once the conductor gets there, it's pretty sick. But everything before that, it's an intentional slow burn. But it's a little too slow for my liking. We'll put it in B. Khaki Bottoms, Rabbit Man, he doesn't do anything for me. And the ball pit shenanigans don't really do much for me either. It would be nice if the car was, like, pretty easy, but also not literally child's play. But I have to appreciate the effort that went into making the ball pit car the most dramatic episode of the season. I just think that's a funny... discrepance. What am I thinking of? Dissonance. There we go. That's the word. The past car. I can't even remember which car this technically takes place in. I guess it's the ball pit car, right? But the past car is completely in tapes. So the tape is definitely the setting here. I don't think it's as good as Tulip's tape. We get the kind of like, well, duh, Amelia Ulrich twist. It does give us a lot of background on Amelia. I'm going to put it probably here. Yeah. I don't know. We get a lot of background. Like, Amelia is almost like the denizen of this car. Like, she's interfacing with Tulip's issues in a way that makes her realize things. We get the train lore of the door appearing and Tulip being able to leave, even though we kind of already knew that. And I don't know. We get the cat. We get 1-1. We get some plot. It's a pretty good episode. But it's kind of... I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's pacing. I'm not sure, but it feels slow to me. At least on rewatch. I can't go back and, like, imagine what it was like to watch it the first time. But there's some, like, little bumps in it. Not as big as some of these other episodes, but it's still not perfect. And then we get, what is this, the engine? That's what it's called? Yeah, the engine. The engine. I'm really torn about this one, too. On one hand, just the fact that we get to see the engine and that 1-1 was the conductor, and we get to talk to Amelia, and we get to learn that her number is huge. That's a huge amount of train lore. So that really makes up for the fact that Tulip's basically done her arc now, right? The engine's kind of a boring setting, I'd say. I don't really care for the fact that their fight takes place in essentially the unfinished car part 2. And I don't know, the thing where Tulip's shooting the Corgi orb and turns a bunch of stuff into Corgis. That was funny the first time, but I think it went on a little too long. That's basically the things that jump out at me when I remember this episode, but I do think it's very good. Do I like it more than the grid car opening? Probably not. Yeah, that feels right. That feels right. Oh boy, we're into my favorite season. Yes, season 2 is my favorite season of Infinity Train. A lot of people like season 3 better. I don't think season 3 is as good, even though it's still really good. But, you know. The first is the Black Market Car. I kind of ragged on the fight in the engine, or like episode 10 of season 1. The creativity in this fight scene here is just really, really high intensity. I don't know if I want to put it in A or S. Probably A. We get a bunch of lake. We get the slivers. Isn't that what they're called? The flex. They're flex. Sliver is what they call her. The flex running around. And then we end up with Alan Dracula in the family tree car, like the top of it. It actually took me a long time to realize the top of the family tree car is actually like the little autumn forest that we end this episode in. For some reason, it just didn't occur to me. But yeah, that's how it works. It's pretty good. Pretty good. The setting's pretty neat. We get some good character stuff. I guess the Black Market Car and the family tree car, like the top of it, aren't that interesting. That's probably why it's held back from being S tier. We don't get to spend a lot of time there. Again, it's a chase scene, right? So it's kind of unfortunate that we don't get to spend much time in those two cars, but it's a pretty great introduction. Infinity Train's really good at episode 1s. I think I'll put it here. Yeah. Alright, the family tree car. I do like the idea that this is... Well, for one, we meet Jesse in this episode, so that's pretty good. And technically, Alan Dracula gets his name in this episode. But I think the family tree car is just a little wasted potential in terms of, you know... We'll talk about this when we get to Pig Baby. But just the tiny line that the cow creamer says when she's like, yes, and then you will become Pig Baby. That makes it all the more horrifying what's going on, right? I would have liked it a lot better if, instead of it being just like these random people stuck in the tree, it was implied, maybe not explicitly stated, but implied that these were former passengers that had either met up and were having issues, or maybe passengers and denizens could become part of the tree, that were turned to wood because of their arguing and then became part of the tree and continued to argue. And even though, you know, you could get out of the tree if you can figure out how to sort out your differences. But, you know, the close proximity and never being able to, you know, separate and think critically about it, basically being in a constant argument until you figure it out. That's kind of what the Infinity Train is, generally. Just throw them in the deep end and hope they figure it out. So that would have been a really neat version of this. I do think this is probably the right place for it. A neat episode, but kind of just filler when it really comes down to it. I still like the concept, though. Next is the map car? This is the map car, right? Yeah, the map car. I think this is top of B tier. Yeah. Yeah, I like the I don't even remember his name. What's his name? It's like... I don't remember. The Wind. Marshall? Something like that? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. The Wind guy is a really great denizen for Jesse because, you know, peer pressure is his issue, essentially. But the map car itself is kind of boring. It has a setting. It's an interesting idea. I just wish that the chase sequence that we get... I think the chase sequence actually starts in the Toad car. Right? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure this episode ends on like the twist that the water is now reflective and the mirror police come up and say a line and then the episode ends. If the chase sequence had continued in this episode, I think it would have been a bit better. I might be wrong about that, but from my memory, that's what I think happens. And I was like, oh, that's kind of unfortunate. But as it goes, pretty solid. No train lore. Kind of settings kind of interesting, but not really. Then you got good denizens and good character interaction. The Toad Car. I actually really like the Toad Car. Again, not S tier, but I think it's an A tier. It's one of these episodes where we somberly just sit down with our characters and talk about it. You know, we learn Jesse's backstory. Jesse learns about MT's backstory. We get some emotional manipulation attempts from the Flex. We get some pretty good stuff in this episode. But, you know, the setting is literally just a white void. Although it does raise lore questions, which is interesting. If the Toad needs to be kicked to leave the car, and their solution to escape the Flex in this case is to take the Toad with them after they kick him, how does this car function anymore? Does the train just replace the Toad? Or, you know, he goes on to become, in the carnival, an attraction where he gets kicked. Every time he gets kicked at that carnival, does the door open back in the train car? Like, what happens there? Is it just a dud now? It's an interesting question. And I like the interpersonal stuff going on in this episode quite a lot. I think it beats out the cool chase sequence of the black market car in terms of, you know, neatness. But yeah. Hey, remember when I started the video and said there's only one episode that's going to get F tier? This is it. What is it even called? I just called this episode Perry the Parasite. The Parasite Car. I like the idea behind this, okay? I like the idea that Alan Dracula, the perfect denizen for Jesse, someone who cannot, like, persuade him to do bad things, is taken over by this parasite who loves doing bad things, or at least, you know, as a function of its being, has to do bad things to people in order to survive. But there are three cars in this episode, right? There's that marshy swamp car, the fashion show car, for lack of a better word, and then the food pyramid car. None of those are particularly interesting to me. The runway car is probably the best one. But then again, it's kind of just for a brief sight gag. And Perry is super annoying. And I just do not really care for it at all. It's one of those episodes where you can legitimately skip it and you don't miss out on anything. Like, if you were to skip the crystal car, for example, you would miss out on the early indications of Tulip's character arc. If you skip out on this episode, what do you miss? Like, nothing, right? So yeah, I think this might be the only worthless episode of Infinity Train. And it's unfortunate, because it's a good idea. Twisting Alan Dracula, I think I messed up and stopped in the middle of this point, but twisting Alan Dracula from someone who cannot convince Jesse to do anything to basically being a peer pressure machine is an interesting idea. It's just too bad it doesn't really work, because Alan Dracula doesn't have character. So, plus I just don't like seeing animals in pain. Ugh. Okay. This is the Lucky Cat car. I remember this one because that's a really catchy name. No wonder it's a teeming establishment. Once again, we have the cat, and we have perfect reason why the cat is in this car. Because the cat likes to scam people. And what's a bigger scam than carnival games? It also introduces us to the Apex, which is really neat for train lore purposes. We get some interesting dialogue about basically denizens being less, or passengers being preferred over denizens in terms of train functions, which is kind of unfortunate, just in general. Not so bad for people like Randall or the cat who can just travel over the train cars, but for somebody like MT who really doesn't have that option, having to be stuck in this train car for like potentially months upon months just because passengers keep coming through kind of rough. Like, what if the toad didn't want to be a carnival attraction? Now the toad's just stuck in here and can't leave. It's a good episode. It's really quite neat. I like it quite a lot. I think that's fair. I think the Toad Car asks more interesting questions about our characters. This one's more about the train, but we get most of this stuff later, so it's okay. This is the mall car, right? Yeah. So I don't know why they chose this screenshot for it, because this is probably the most uninteresting part of it. This is the perfect episode for Jesse as a character. Not only does he get his exit in this episode, but the peer pressure thing gets turned up to 11 when it's with other people around his age, like mob mentality. It's really, really good. And of course, Jesse's not going to turn his back on MT at this point. We're pretty certain of that. But there is that thought that, if things hadn't gone this way in particular, if Jesse and MT hadn't become so close, if this had been their third car together, maybe he would have, right? I don't know. It's very interesting. And the Apex is just one of the most interesting concepts in the entirety of Infinity Train. The idea that there's this group of people who don't really understand how the train works and think they're right and refuse to be wrong. It's really neat. Also, that moment where Jesse's fading away through his exit and MT just can't come through. That's a pretty heartbreaker moment right there. It's a good one. Better than the Chrome Car. Better than the Chrome Car. There we go. Chrome Car is just really neat conceptually. This one's actually resonant, Next up is the Wasteland? Yes, the Wasteland. I'm alright with this episode. This is one of those ones that I think other people like a lot more than me. But I guess the biggest piece of train lore we get in this episode, despite being outside the train, which is pretty unexplored, is that there's some sort of gravitational field that pulls objects from the train back towards it at some point. Or at least it pulls, sentient beings back from it. Which is kind of neat. Also, what's his name? Mace? Yeah, Mace. Mace and Sieve. Mace gets shredded to bits in this episode, which is pretty shocking. But as episode 8s go, it's okay. I think that's fair. It's a pretty good character study on MT, but it's not entirely the most engaging thing every time. Again, one of those episodes that still feels a little bit sluggish at some points, but is still really good. I gotta keep in mind, because it sounds like I don't like this show, but it goes without saying that I love basically every episode of this, except for Parasite Car. So I'm basically just pointing out my few criticisms with each of them. I like pretty much all of these episodes very well. What is this one? The passenger farm car? The number car. No, that's episode 10. This is the tape car. This is the tape car. This is where the tapes get made, so I guess that makes sense. But I think people call it the passenger farm in the show. This is a pretty... Again, I wonder if that's just an episode 9 thing, where we get a huge lore dump. I haven't really noticed that, but maybe we will as time goes on here. But this is actually kind of like a horror movie episode. This is actually kind of conceptually scary. The idea that there's all these people laying in the floor getting their brains read by these weird dinosaur robots. Ooh, don't like it. But that's the point. I do like MT's breakdown in this episode too. It's a pretty good setup for episode 10. Yeah. It's a really good episode. But it's not it's not resolute. You know what I mean? The next episode, however, is The finale of season 2. This one is the number car, which is the engine again, but don't worry about that. Number car. Yeah. Number car is the best so far. Jesse coming back, the train implications of his number being messed up because his problem was a result of the train. That's really neat. Seeing 1-1, this is kind of like a character thing, which is kind of weird because 1-1 isn't even one of our main characters in this season. But seeing 1-1 indecisive about whether or not he should just let MT die in order to solve this error is really crazy. It's something that's stuck with everyone since that episode aired. There's still people who are like, yeah, 1-1's kind of a jerk. Like, come on. Amelia was right, you know? I don't really like 1-1. We hate 1-1. It's just a good episode, okay? I also like the conclusion, right? Because, like, as Infinity Train conclusions go, usually they're a little bit bittersweet. Especially in season 3. But in season 4, we get to see our dudes playing in the band, but we don't really get to know what happened to them afterwards. In season 1, we see Tulip going on a trip with her dad, but we don't really get to see much of how things have improved. But in season 2, we just get off the train immediately. MT looks over the water in the real world and says, yeah, I'm claiming a new identity. I'm no longer part of that train. Things worked out for once perfectly for all their struggles. It's just, yeah, it's a really good episode. If that had been the end of Infinity Train, I probably would have been okay with it. You know? Which is kind of crazy to think about. Alright, we're moving on to season 3. Oh, boy. This one's tough to talk about. It really is. There's so much going on here. But here we go. The musical car. I thought this was called The New Apex, but that's actually the last episode. The musical car. This is basically the mall car plus. We don't get Jesse, but we do get to see basically the alternate perspective. We get to see Grace and Simon being manipulators the whole time, manipulating all these children. We get to see Lucy, too, who got mentioned in... They mentioned Lucy in the mall car and say, don't point that at your face. You don't want to end up like Lucy. And then we see her and she's wearing an eye patch. Where did you get that from? But poor Lucy. That's real physical harm caused by this train. I guess people die on it all the time, so it's not that bad, but still. Imagine being like 7 years old, being transported to this crazy dimension, being abducted by a child cult, and then accidentally shooting your own eyeball out. Oh, God, poor Lucy. Can we get Lucy for season 6? Because season 5 is about Amelia. It's coming. I'm not going to even say, like, if it comes out. When it does, we're going to have an Amelia story. But I really like the juxtaposition at the beginning of the, when I look at you, I see me, against the Apex literally, like, destroying their home. The kind of terrifying moment when the spotlight is like, just kill it. Like, you think it's a person. It's a really good setup for what we're about to go through. And it's again, kind of like a horror movie, you know? So, it's pretty good. The Jungle Car. This episode ends when... Okay, no, it doesn't end when they get grabbed. I think that's like a commercial break or something. They actually get to talk with Hazel and Tuba. So, you know what? I was going to say this one was probably C tier, but we do get some interesting... So I'll put it in B. Better than Family Tree. Not better than that. You know what? I'm going to put Ball Pit above that as well, I think. Actually, I'm going to put Ball Pit there. It is a really, like, devastating moment. I don't think it's fair to put freaking Randall above it. We get some interesting train lore with Hazel, of course. We get some interesting character dynamics with Tuba and Simon being like, we gotta kill it. It's like, Simon, you're not going to kill the giant gorilla. The giant sonically powered gorilla. I don't know. It's a really good introduction to Hazel. It's just kind of an okay episode for the rest of it. Like, it's kind of interesting in the first half where we see Grace and Simon, two people who we do not like, acting like really chummy and human. So it's like, oh, I kind of want to see them be happy, but like I don't like them. Oh, kind of tears you in two directions. But at the same time, other episodes in this season do it better, and they're coming up very quickly. So, it's okay. It's pretty good. Again, this is like solid. I should probably rename these tiers just so people don't get mad at me. Resonant. Did I spell that right? Who knows? Hopefully I did. I'm out of school now, so my spelling brain is turned off. Very good. Solid. Okay. Whoops. Okay. No Perry. Perry the parasite? No Perry. Yeah, that's probably fair. So yeah. It's solid, but it's not perfect. Next up, the debutante ball car. When we talk about settings for episodes, debutante ball car, that one's pretty high up there. I really like the idea of it. Then again, what if you're just not good at dancing? Like, there are tons of people in this world who just don't do dancing very well. You're just stuck here forever? Oh, boy. There's some interesting stuff where Grace and Simon have to conform to the train's rules, and it kind of opens them up to the idea of doing it in future episodes, because they never even try to, like, break out of that idea after this. Some really neat stuff with Hazel. We get some Grace backstory. We get to see Tuba doing a ballroom dance. It's pretty good. I will forever remember this line where one of the freaking people, I can't remember what they are. I think they're all glass. In this car is like, is that a gorilla? I think so. Well, it's just something like that. It's pretty good. Yeah, right there. That feels good. Next up, what is this one? Oh, the Châtelet car. The Châtelet. Which is French for the cat mansion car. Chalet isn't really a mansion, but cat fancy house car. Oh man, this one's really good too. We get the backstory with Simon. We get backstory with the cat. The cat has a reason to be here. Again, subtly noted. I'm on vacation. Perfect. Yep. We get some really... I'm kind of biased. No, not better than that. I'm kind of biased because I'm into psychology. It's what I'm studying. And this episode is kind of a deep dive into, like, PTSD. So, yeah, I'm a little biased that, they're talking about that in a show like this. It's very exciting for me. But it's also just a really good episode. Like, it's if you weren't hooked before this point, you are now hooked in season 3. So, I also like that bear guy. What's his name? I don't know. But anybody want some pancakes? You kids got allergies? Yeah, it's pretty great. Also, Sky Randall. Gas Randall. Again, very interesting concept of train lore. Like, the water denizens can be frozen into ice and still be alive, or they can be, like, they can change states. It's just an interesting concept, right? The color clock car. Once again, just like the ball pit car, we've got an episode where the first half is kind of lame, and then the second half goes off the rails completely and goes into crazy town. I do like this one better than the ball pit car, though, because at least the first half is interesting, right? I'm going to put it above the Wasteland, too. I think I like Corgunia better, so I'll leave it here. I like the idea that this car must be specifically placed. Again, this is kind of like meta, but it kind of leads to the idea that each passenger has a determined path by the train. Like, you're not just going into random train cars, like their cars specifically tailored to your issue. Because if the train didn't know they were traveling with a colorblind denizen, they would not have been able to clear this car, right? So, it's an interesting concept there. We get to see wheeling for the first time in the show, and hopefully the last. Oh, man. We get some serious talk about othering. We get some pretty charming stuff with Simon and Tuba, and then we get, the betrayal. I don't know. I feel like the relationship with Simon and Tuba in this episode is kind of not right. Doesn't feel right to have that in this episode. I feel like this should have been the episode before. Like, maybe... I mean, Tuba is like a motherly figure, right? So when Simon says the cat abandoned a child, maybe Tuba takes his side, and then they're kind of friendly. But as they go through this maze, stuff starts to break down, and Simon realizes, like, no, this is a denizen. I hate denizens. And then he comes to it, like, this ultimate moral choice of, it's a person who took your side, who wants to help you, blah, 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 blah. Versus, it goes against my belief system that is bad. And then he chooses the bad path, because of course he does. But I think that would have been a better structure for this. It's pretty good the way it is, but again, it's not like a masterpiece of a murder as far as the show goes. The show does do a lot of murder for a technically young adult kid show type deal, but this one, it's only an okay murder. You know what, Khaki Bottoms? Oh man, I'm so conflicted. You know what, I think I have to put these two above. I keep moving the freaking ball pit car, but it's hard, okay? I feel like these two are kind of in limbo. They're basically the same episode. They've both got separate issues that make them not outstanding to me, but they're both pretty good. So these two are basically at the exact same place. Just think of it that way. Next up, it's the... What is this one called? The campfire car. I just remember it as the sad episode. Oh, dude. Talking about psychology, right? Like, the animation in this one is really stunning, too. I can't put it above the Cheshire car. I can't even put it here. It's probably better than the mall car. The, like, random freaking denizens here, like the Pinecone people and stuff, those didn't really need to be here. They're probably put in there for kids, It's gonna be a little wacky. But at the same time, like, kind of messes with the tone a little bit. But the rest of it, though, the rest of it's very good. Way better than the murder episodes, which basically give you a lot of shock value and some really gut punchy moments. But this one is like, yeah, that gut punch, it really affected everybody. Just so you know, they're feeling really bad right now. How does that make you feel? It's very good. It's very good. In season 1, when Atticus gets blasted, Tulip doesn't really have time to slow down and think about, the fact that Atticus just got blasted. It's really nice that this season gave a complete episode to just break down sort of like grief. Because Tuba was literally gone forever. Like, actually dead. So, it needed it. And I'm glad they gave it. So I have to rank it high. What is this? The Cavern of the Golden Snakes car? Canyon of the Golden Winged Snakes car. Close, but not quite. This is the one where, I guess the last episode was the one where they cross the bridge and Amelia comes back and she's like, "What are you kids doing to the train cars?" And in this one, they're just like, "We can't trust her. Let's run away into a cave." I think this is the one where Simon goes back to the cat and gets those little juju jujubes, mini one-ones to steal Grace's memories, if I remember correctly. Maybe he stole my memories for 2. No, yeah, it is. It is. This is where we learn the cat's name as well. You know, it's necessary, right? Like, we need to set all this stuff up for when bad things happen later. But as it stands, not crazy. Nothing crazy happens here. Plus, I might be alone on this, but I don't really like the Canyon of the Winged Snakes, Golden Winged Snakes car. For one, that name is too much of a mouthful. But nothing really interesting is happening there. It's just a bunch of holes in the ground with snakes in them. Okay, sure. I guess, you know, it's not really in the focus. But you can see in these top episodes, the car that we're in, it elevates the story, right? Even though it's in the background sometimes. Like, in, what is this one called? Not the new Apex. I'm trying to call it that again. The musical car. We don't spend any time in the musical car, essentially. It's literally just a background element. But because you know how it sort of works, you know that, like, you're supposed to sing along about empathy and learn how it goes. The fact that they're destroying it, it increases that narrative, right? It makes it more compelling. Whereas something like the Canyon of the Golden Winged Snakes car, it's like, okay, we're just here. But the narrative is cool, but the setting is just kind of like, street corner, 5 o'clock. It's just kind of normal. Next up, is this the Hey Ho Wo car? Yeah, it is. It kind of hurts me that this episode, being in episode 8, isn't really that interesting. I feel like these two are like a 2-part setup for the next 2 episodes, which are going to be crazy wild. I guess this is the episode, I'll put this above the Canyon and the Winged Snakes car. This is the episode where we learn for real that Hazel is a denizen and that she is Amelia's creation, which we had all kind of assumed beforehand because Amelia makes turtles. Also, that line where she's like, I'm Hazel. And Amelia's like, that's debatable. Like, Amelia. It's like setup again. It's setup. It's not bad, but it's not an episode to be like, this one was really good. Because, you know, not a ton really happens in it. It's just the breaking point before we get into the real crazy stuff, which is coming up. So episode 9, this is the Origami Car. This is Grace's tape car, essentially. We get to learn about her backstory. We get to learn about her view of the conductor. We get to see Simon being a jerk for more screen time. And the ending of, we just won't tell Simon. We just won't tell Simon. While she's like laying on the ground in like a coma. That feels like an episode 8 type thing. So, you know what? I'm okay with those other 2 being just okay. I can't say it's as good as Tulip's tape car. I'm going to put it at the bottom of Resonant, of S tier. Because, you know, it's pretty good. You know what? I'm going to move... I feel like that's more fitting, honestly. Yeah. I think that's more fair. Actually, yeah, there we go. And then the new Apex. The actual new Apex. This one's really hard to rank for me. Grace comes out of her memories. She kind of like says goodbye to Hazel. And then she has to confront Simon. And they have a big fight scene. And Simon looks like an anime villain. And then he dies. She fake out dies. And then he dies. And then she's like, well, we're going to have to figure it out, guys. And they're like, what? And then their numbers start going down. It's the only way you could have really ended this season, right? There's no way this didn't end with conflict, like drastic physical conflict. But I don't know. Something about it just feels a little bit surface level. in terms of what's been going on in this season. Because this season delved so deep into its character psychology that it's kind of sad that the final episode has no thinking, all punching. As a finale, pretty decent. But unlike the finale of season 2, which continued with the questions from the season and just brought them to a head, it feels like everything was brought to the head in the last episode, and this is the cleanup for that. So, that being said, where did I even put the last episode? I put it up here. I think this can go at the top of very good. Yeah, I think that's fair. Alright, now we're into season 4. This is the reason I wanted to do this, because a lot of people say season 4 is the worst one. Just because it's tonally very much different. But I actually like some of these episodes a lot. So it'd be interesting to see how different our opinions are. Episode 1. Yep. The split screen thing is really cool. And I know if you've watched any Infinity Train Book 4 stuff, everybody says that. But that's because it's true. We usually, in an introductory episode, spend maybe like a few hours with our character before they got on the train. Like with Amelia, we see like her growing up a little bit. That's probably the longest back we go with a character to understand their motivations. With Tulip, we see parts of her whole life, but they're not like directly connected in the same way they are in this episode, which I think is just the benefit of having these two characters who know each other before they get on the train. And then Jesse, we get like one scene of his backstory, but it doesn't matter because you don't really need to know anything more about him. There's just so much to say about it. In terms of train lore, one, we learned that the train can appear literally anywhere. It doesn't have to like even spatially make sense. Like every time the train has appeared, one, in the middle of the woods, on top of a building, outside of the police station, like there's ample room for it to sort of like appear. In this case, it's literally just a portal in a doorway, which I wonder, it makes you wonder, like in the past, was it less persuasive for people to get onto the train? Like in the present day train world, it tries to kind of trick people to get onto it. But in the past, was that not the case? I don't know. It's kind of a weird idea. Technically, Amelia's was way even farther back, I should say. But even then, it was kind of being a little bit sly by being like, yeah, now there's a train here. Don't you want to get on it? And in this one, it's like, there's just a weird portal. Made a train noise, but if you were in that moment, you probably wouldn't even know it was a train. And the slow burn reveal that we're in the past, it's also good. It's very good. We get to set up two characters for the price of one, and learn a whole bunch of other stuff. Plus that ending with One and Amelia, where we learn why she calls him One, because he used to be just one. It's a really, really great introduction, which is kind of a shame because the next two episodes are kind of not that great. When we talk about kind of just generic kids show episodes, episode 2 feels like that a lot. We get introduced to Kez. Kez is great. I like Kez a lot. But this episode is peak, what are you doing, guys? Like, what is happening? The thing shifts time. Everybody who watches this episode says, so you should probably put it in the middle. That would be the present, right? And of course they're not going to think about that. No, because then we wouldn't have an episode. What is this even called? I didn't even say the name of the car. The first one's called the Twin Tapes, which is, again, a very good name for a car. Oh, it's the Iceberg car. Yeah. The setting, what happens, none of it really does anything for me. The only redeeming part of this episode, which means, you can't just, like, skip it like you would with Perry, is, one, you get introduced to Kez. But, The conversation at the end of the episode is really solid. The idea of like, man, two mortal enemies trapped on this train at the same time? That's crazy. What? We're not enemies. Yeah, we're best friends. Oh. Okay. It's a great setup. But next is probably my least favorite episode of season 4, the Old West car. Hey, remember how every time I've been talking about cat episodes so far, I've been like, they subtly hint in the background why the cat is here. This is the only time we don't get that. And it's the only time I want to know more than anything. This is the cat 40 years in the past. Why is the cat running a bar in this town? These people don't seem necessarily dumb. She's not scamming them. She doesn't have a collection here. She doesn't have any purpose to be here. Apparently she's been here a while because she recognizes Kaz. So like, why the cat? Why? Just tell me. That would have elevated this episode at least a little bit. What I do like about this episode is the character design of the bugs. It's very nice. But then again, it's not really too creative. Like, as Infinity Train cars go, usually there'll be some sort of a twist on the norm. If we're going to be focusing on the car itself and we're not just passing through it. Like, for example, the beach car, where all the residents of the beach town are made out of the water. That's interesting. Or how about the map car, where the main antagonist is literally the wind? That's also interesting. In this one, it's like, they're cowboys, but they're bugs. It's like, oh. Okay. Is there like a connection there? Or no. They're just bug cowboys. Oh. Okay. So, yeah. That's kind of the reason I don't like this episode. It doesn't really give us anything other than some kind of cool bug designs, and that's about it. But now we're getting to the good stuff, alright? Pig baby car. Okay. I know what you're saying. How can you like Pig Baby Car? I do, though. Because much like the Family Tree Car, which I think a lot of other people don't really like that much. Well, no. Pig Baby Car, one, provides us with that existential horror of the fact that this giant pig baby might have once been a passenger. But two, provides us with some really great insight into Ryan and Mingy. Mingy. I did the G thing. I'm sorry. The series specifically told me not to do that. Oh, boy. And the joke about American food is pretty funny. Kez is good in this one. Or Lorraine, I should say. It's Lorraine. It's just a pretty good car as things go. Like, conceptually, it works for me. We get some good stuff with Ryan and McGee. Good jokes, good denizen stuff. It's pretty good. I guess the train lore portion of this would be the fact that, does this mean that denizens can or that passengers can become denizens? Huh. Right? Interesting. Alright. Again, people are going to be like, seriously? You like the Astro Q car? And yes. Yes, I do. I like that this episode flips our perceptions of the characters on their head. Because pretty much everybody, including me, going into this thought that Mingy was going to be kind of like our protagonist, and Ryan was going to be kind of like... It was going to be like Grace and Simon, right? Mingy would be like our Grace, and Ryan would kind of be like our Simon. Where Ryan's always like pushing Mingy in the wrong direction, and that Mingy is trying to stay on the straight and narrow, but is easily persuaded to do bad things. And what happened? The complete opposite! Mingy becomes this smug jerk that we do not like in this episode, because he thinks that all the problems going on right now are Ryan's fault. He shoves all the blame onto him. And immediately you recognize, oh, that's why Ryan has a problem with this guy. I get it now. I get why this whole, like, relationship fell apart or whatever. It's a very good character episode. In the same vein as the Toad Car, actually. But I like it more than the Toad car because, one, I think the bouncer's really funny. More funny than the Toad. They're both comedic characters, right? But I think the bouncer being tricked by like, yeah, we're the band, dude, let us in. And he's like, okay, is pretty great. But I also like the fact that Ryan is so manically trying to find his own solution to the problem that he exposes some interesting train stuff. For example, he tries to dig into the floor, and all that's down there is weird pipes that shoot out like goo at him. Oh, what is that? What does that stuff do? Is that going to damage this train car now? Like, did he just break it? But yeah, it's a good episode. A really good character episode. Next up is the party car. Party time. It's party time. This is another character exploration episode. But this one's not quite as good, I don't think. Although it has a much better resolution. Much like the Parasite episode, it tries to delve into Kez's backstory, I think a little too early. At this point, Kez is basically just the mediator between Ryan and Mingi. I don't really care about Kez at this point, okay? That's what I'm saying. And I know, like, well, you gotta start somewhere. Well, it should have started in the castle. It should have. That would have been a nice subversive point. Especially coming out of the art gallery car, but we'll get to that. Pretty good. Nothing too amazing. Held back by a couple things. It actually is kind of amazing, but it's held back a little bit. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. So, next is the art gallery car. Dude. If I can put the Chrome car in S tier for being conceptually great, then I'm going to put the art gallery car in S tier for being conceptually great. Yeah, you can still see everything. Good. The hand monster. I think its name is the docent, or the, I'm sure it says it on the wikis, so I have it open to get the names of the episodes. A monster, the door, what? Whatever. I think the name, my point was going to be, I think the name the art gallery car monster, while being a lot wordier and kind of awkward to say, is much more intimidating. Which is what people were calling it before we realized it actually has a name. The art gallery car monster. It sounds like a B movie from like the 60s or whatever, but that's cool. I like that it literally makes you cold to the people around you. But at the same time, you can see why the train keeps it around, because it did help them expose their problems to each other with no holding back. And it actually helped them in the long run, even though it almost killed Mingi. But, you know, that's the train for you. Especially in the 80s, apparently. It's a really good episode. It's a really good conceptual episode. And we have some really good character moments here as well. With the, you left me! And Ryan almost actually doing it. Yeah. Next up, the Mega Maze car. Mega Maze. This is a talk it out episode, kind of like not Kenny and the Golden Snakes, the Hey Ho Wo car, where the car itself isn't really that crazy, but you know the character stuff is supposed to carry it. It's pretty good. Not my favorite version of this kind of episode, but it does have a really cool chase. The Pig Baby eating the monarch guy just because butterfly? Huh. That's a pretty good joke. Also the bouncer at the drawbridge of the castle. We're the band? And he just opens the door for them. Oh, that silly bouncer. That's why I like it. That's why I like it more than Hey Ho Wo. It's basically the same premise, except the car in this one's actually kind of interesting. We get a little action in there too. Nice. what's this, the castle car? Yeah, this is the castle car. I wanted to call it the Morgan car, but that's not right. The twist that Morgan was the castle. Again, kind of like the Amelia Ulrich thing. We kind of all saw it coming when we got there. This one's kind of hard to rank. I don't know. Ryan being kind of depressed, and then Ming-Yi having to be the supportive, upbeat one. Interesting idea. This is the one that kicks off Kez's kind of emotional arc here. That's short, but good. So... you know what? I'm going to put it right above the party car. I think that's fair. I think this does what the party car was doing, and it's just elevated ever so slightly. Not that I don't like what they did in the party car, but I think this one's just a better version of that, essentially. And finally, Train to Nowhere. At least you're there. It's as finales go, alright? Hear me out. As finales of Infinity Train go, kind of a letdown. As an episode, pretty good. Ryan and Ming-Yi finally coming together again, being like, I ain't leaving you behind, man. Kez and Morgan kind of repairing their relationship a little bit, at least being open to talk to each other about it. The thing where all the denizens just accept their apologies kind of silly. But then again, the judge didn't, and Pig Baby ate him, or whatever. Don't remember exactly how that worked. Pig Baby unate him, and then he got fried or something. You know, I don't really remember. They had to add a little bit of death in there, you know? I don't know where to rank this one. This one's really hard. No. Maybe? Yeah. There we go. And that's perfect, because now it just fills up the screen, and you can just not see Perry the Parasite. Which, you know what? That's okay with me. So I'm going to pause the recording for a moment and do some quick maths. I'll be right back. Alright, so what I took a break to do just then was count up the episodes to try to see which season gets the most points. So I did it two ways, because I didn't feel like it'd be fair to do it one way or the other. Seems how I did rank them between tiers. I wanted to do a method that would give them extra points for each tier, which in turn means that no Perry is worth 1 point. Counting up through all of the 40 episodes, that means that our top episode here, the number car, is worth 40 points. Calculating them this way, that left me with a total of Season 4 with 171 points, Season 2 with 194 points, Season 3 with 225 points, and Season 1 with 224. I counted that wrong because they were so close. But Season 3 and Season 1 both almost got the exact same number in this calculation method, which I thought was kind of crazy. I don't really... Despite the fact that I like Season 2 the best, I guess Season 2 has the highest highs, but also the most middling. Part of it's because it's the only season that has an episode in the lowest category, which was worth 0. Sorry. OKs were worth 1 point. Well, no, Perry was worth 1 point in this one. Next one we'll go over. And then we went up from there. The second method I used to calculate it was just calculating between the tiers. Where episodes in F tier or no Perry tier were worth 0 points, OK tier were worth 1, solid were worth 2, very good were worth 3, and resonant were worth 4. In this case, we still had Season 4 in last with 25. However, Season 2 was much closer with 26 points. Then we had Season 3 with 28 and Season 1 with 30. So that would say to me that I enjoy the most Season 1 and Season 3 in terms of writing and characters and such. But Season 2 is my personal favorite. So yeah, that's interesting. It is, of course, pretty obvious that these numbers are pretty dang close, and that's because I like all the seasons of the show. If you haven't watched it yet, I live in Canada, right? Ryan and Mingy actually come from the same province I come from, which is kind of crazy to think about. I thought they were in, like, I don't know, Toronto, Ontario, somewhere around there. Not Toronto, Ontario. But no, they're apparently from the other end of the country. I'll let you discover that on your own. So that's kind of neat. But the thing about that is, we don't have HBO Max here. So technically, you can't watch Infinity Train in Canada. But you can because VPNs exist. It's a pain in the butt. But there's like this huge list of countries that are getting HBO Max coming to them very soon. I remember it's a lot of the Latin American countries. And I don't know if there were European ones in there. I didn't read the list too closely after the C's, which is why I remember the Latin America countries. But hey, if HBO Max is coming to your country, do me a big favor and stream it. You can do it. Watch the show. Support the show. I want more of this show, man. If I have to remake this tier list, I'll be happy. Give me a season 5, please. But yeah. Maybe I should do this with Avatar episodes at some point. Would you guys be interested in that? Because Avatar is another show like this one that I really like. But it has even more episodes. My voice is already tired from doing 40, so I'm done for now. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. And then, of course, comment if you want to see me rank Avatar episodes. Or episodes of any of the shows that I talked about in my 2020 animation stuff. Okay, bye!